So you're visiting a friend who's attending seminary or divinity school, and while they're in class, you're strolling around the campus bookstore. Or maybe you're just wandering in a used bookstore, and you find a commentary that covers a book of the Bible that you're going to begin a Bible study on, and you're thinking about buying it, but you're wondering, how do you go about identifying a good commentary? Well, that's what this video is all about. Stick around, and I'll be right back. Hey, thanks for sticking around. This is ASKABIBLEPROF.com, where we give straightforward answers to your questions about the Bible and Christianity. If you find this video interesting, then consider hitting like and subscribing, and we can introduce you to other helpful videos. Today, we're discussing how to identify a good commentary. Now, in a previous video, I discussed who can write a commentary, what you should expect from commentaries, and how to save a little money before you buy a commentary. So if you're interested in that video, I'll leave a link in the description box below. So with that in mind, let's get started. By far, the most common question I get from my students is what commentaries they should buy to help them with their assignments. And I'm sure this is true for most profs. And usually we just recommend 2 or 3 and we're done with it. And a lot of people might just say, well, I'll just simply ask one of my pastors. You know, really, sometimes that can be rather dicey. You know, regrettably, some pastors don't even use commentaries. And I know some of you are probably thinking right now, inconceivable! Yeah, I know, it's sad but true. And some pastors only use commentaries written by other popular pastors. And that's why their sermons tend to be very superficial and don't give any real in-depth analysis. And other pastors only have commentaries that are well over 100 years old, and regrettably, those types of commentaries don't give any real answers to current theological issues or relevant application for modern believers. And then, of course, there are commentaries that may not be helpful for you given your current spiritual development, capabilities, or interests. That doesn't mean that they're bad commentaries. They may be great commentaries. They're just not commentaries that are going to be very helpful for you right now. And lastly, a lot of pastors don't earn a lot of money, and therefore they can't afford to own a commentary on every book of the Bible. And sometimes pastors are given commentaries as gifts. And since that's the only commentary they know, that's the only one they can recommend. But that doesn't mean that it's a good commentary. So really, it's buyer beware when it comes to buying commentaries based solely upon the recommendations of others. And that includes me. But it's especially true when buying a commentary based solely upon the recommendation that you read off the internet. You really should avoid that kind of practice when it comes to buying your own commentaries. But let's just say you have a commentary in your hands right now, and you're trying to figure out whether it's a good one, whether it's one worth buying, one that will strengthen your faith in the Lord and God's Word. Well, I have 3 tests that I commonly use that I think can help anybody who's considering buying a commentary because they're pretty easy. So let's walk through them right now. Test number 1. So if you're thinking about buying a commentary on a specific book in the Bible, I'm assuming that you're pretty familiar with it to some extent. So find the section that covers the passage that you're most familiar with. Maybe it's your favorite passage in that book, and read the commentary on that passage. And as you read that commentary, one of 4 things may happen. First, the commentary may be so technical that you have no idea what the scholar is talking about. And if this occurs, then it just means it's probably not a helpful commentary for you. Again, it doesn't mean that it's a bad commentary. It's just not going to be a commentary that helps you a lot. An example of these types of commentaries are called exegetical commentaries. And exegetical commentaries primarily focus upon the biblical passages as they are found in the original biblical languages. And therefore that means that they're going to spend a lot of focus discussing grammatical nuances and literary devices. Well, if you're not competent in the biblical languages, then you're really not going to benefit from their discussion. And therefore commentaries such as these aren't going to be as helpful to you as other commentaries. Second, some scholars don't really focus upon interpreting the biblical author's meaning. Instead, the commentary mostly focuses upon the history of theological interpretation. Specifically, it focuses upon how some early church fathers and medieval theologians handled the text. And if this occurs, then just realize it's probably not going to be a helpful commentary for you, mainly because it doesn't address any current theological issues or provide any relevant application for today. Just know that some theologians are more interested in the history that surrounds the text or the historical influence of the text than they are when it comes to actually interpreting the biblical passage's meaning. Third, the scholar may argue that we can't even know the passage's meaning because we don't actually know its author or his motives or the context in which he actually wrote. Instead, it's more probable that the passage was later edited or redacted by a later Christian community that wanted to institutionalize its brand of Christianity upon the broader church. Now, if you discover that the commentary provides these kind of conjectures and speculations, then you should avoid them. And you should also make a note of the series that they're a part of, and you should avoid that entire series as well. The sad truth is that some publishers and scholars have no regard for the veracity of the scriptures or the fact that they are inspired, and therefore you should just simply avoid them at all costs. And fourth and finally, the commentary is written in a way that you can understand it. And that's the key, that you can pretty much understand what the scholar is trying to communicate. And that usually means that the commentary is straightforward about the passage's immediate context and its interpretation. And ultimately, the author will provide explanations as to why his position is most reasonable and most defensible. Now, if you find a commentary like that, then you probably have your hands on a pretty good commentary. And if that's the case, then it's time to proceed to test number 2. So with respect to test 2, usually in every book of the Bible, there are 2 or 3 difficult passages. So go to a section in the commentary that covers one of these passages and read it. A good commentary will provide the leading positions in a fair and balanced manner, and then the scholar will provide his own position and give rationale for why his interpretation is the most defensible. This is the hallmark of every quality commentary. However, if the author never gets around to articulating his or her own interpretation or promoting the most defensible position, then you may want to avoid that commentary. The sad truth is that some publishers are more concerned with offending potential customers than they are with promoting accurate exegesis and biblical theology. And that means they'll instruct their editors and scholars from taking positions on controversial issues raised by these passages. And regrettably, this kind of approach will permeate the entire commentary, which means it will prohibit you from finding critical answers to crucial questions raised by these controversial passages. And really, this is an important function of a good commentary. Good commentaries are not supposed to just provide observations that you could easily make for yourselves. Instead, they're supposed to help you find answers to critical questions raised by these difficult passages. And so if you can't find solutions to the questions raised by these passages, then you probably should avoid that commentary. But if the author provides for you clear conclusions with respect to these controversial passages, then you may have a very good commentary in your hands, and therefore you should proceed to test 3. The final test only involves reviewing the last 2 tests and simply asking yourself this: has the author provided to you any relevant application? Now, I don't mean precise application for you specifically and your specific church in your specific town. Commentaries can't provide that level of detailed application, but they can provide universal applications that believers around the world can easily understand and apply into their daily lives. Because when it comes to Bible study, application is the most important component. As one of my favorite profs used to say, Bible study without application is an abortion of the process. And some may be thinking, that's kind of an offensive thing to say. And if you believe that, then it means you have little understanding about God and his attitude towards his spoken word. Jesus himself said in Matthew 7, "Everyone who hears these words of mine and does not act on them will be like a foolish man that built his house on the sand. The rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and slammed against that house, and it fell, and great was its fall." So as far as Jesus is concerned, there's nothing more offensive than to hear, read, and study his word and give no thought to applying it to your daily life. The bottom line is this: God is offended at anyone who would simply treat his word as if it's just another ancient religious and cultural artifact. This being the case means that a good commentary will be written in a straightforward and coherent manner and will provide to you only the relevant historical, cultural, and literary data, and it will primarily focus upon the grammatically supported interpretation of each biblical passage. It will also provide for you in a fair and balanced manner the leading positions for each interpretation, but it will inevitably elevate the most defensible interpretation. And most importantly, it will provide clear and relevant applications for today's believers that are drawn solely from the biblical texts. If you find a commentary that provides for you that kind of faith-building direction and education, then buy it, and you'll never be sorry. And there you have it. 3 tests that will help you determine whether the commentary you have in your hands is a good commentary. If you appreciated the video, then hit like and consider subscribing, and we can introduce you to other interesting videos. I'm Dr. Monty Shanks for AskABibleProf.com. Thanks for watching, and God bless.